Alrighty guys, another whiteboard video for you. Today we are going to talk about scaling. Scaling is what even the OEM manufacturers do to account for additional airflow on certain tables, whether it be MAF, potentially torque, believe it or not, requested torque. But what I'm going to do is give you a generic example of what scaling looks like in a tune. Now, this isn't representing anything that I actually deal with, but it is a very simplified version of timing versus RPM versus load or boost. So whichever way you want to look at it. So again, Coyote Mustang is my forte. So what we're going to do is kind of guide you as to what is happening in the tune, because a lot of you ask the same question all the time. Alex, let's say for instance you buy a Whipple supercharged Coyote or a Whipple supercharger and you say I have a 3/8 pulley on it, on E85. E85, let's believe this is E85 or race gas. Okay, octane is not an issue. So forget pump gas, this is just scaling. So let's say you have a Whipple supercharger on your Coyote Mustang, let's say a Gen 2, and you have a 3.875 pulley on and it makes 10 PSI at 7,000 RPMs. And then you're like, I'd like to pulley down. Since I know you have the octane and fuel system, I say, go ahead, pulley down. And they go, well, send me another tune. We don't have to. And a lot of people get confused by that. They go, wait a minute. Don't you have to hit the speed density tables? Like, don't you have to hit different tables because I am now adding boost to the car? Again, in very general terms, if the tune is scaled properly, no, you don't. Just like that, you do not. So I'm gonna make a bunch of dumb sounds and look like a moron just to illustrate what happens in a timing table when it is scaled appropriately. So here we have load, or let's say naturally aspirated air load, and the most a Coyote will ever see, it is like 1.0 air load. The only time it sees higher than 1.0 air load is if you're in like negative DA, like the Laurentian Abyss. If you just happen to drive your car to the Laurentian Abyss, you'll be way below sea level. So you'll see about 1.1 load, or if your tune is way off, but let's just assume everything is on the money. So these are RPMs, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4, 5, 6, 7. In red is the most spark you'll ever see on a naturally aspirated car before seeing diminishing gains, meaning anything above 30 degrees, car don't make dick for horsepower. So when you're looking at your data log and your air load's 1.0 and you have anything over 30 degrees of timing, you're stressing things out for an extra 2 or 3 horsepower. So I'm gonna make a bunch of noises to sound like a dumbass. So let's say you give me a wide open throttle pull. Now this is watt, okay? This is all watt, wide open throttle. Let's say I tell you to give me a pull from 3,000 RPMs to 7,000 RPMs. Well, if you were to visualize what the car is doing in terms of timing and RPM, well, let's say max spark at an E85 is at 1.0 load is 30, and because we scale it, that anything above that goes down in timing, so the more air load it will see less timing. So again, imagine it's all one table, 15 across the board, 16, 18, 20. So let's say I say, give me a wide open throttle pull, 3,000 RPMs, all the way to 7,000 RPMs. Well, you go watt and the car does this. And because you're out of airflow, the max spark you'll see is about 29 or 30 degrees depending on where you hit it. If you happen to be in real dense air or negative DA, ridiculous, and there's just a lot of air available, well, the car might hit 1.1 air load, so that means it'll see a little less timing. If it just happens to see a little more airflow, it'll see less timing because the tune is scaled so that additional airflow sees less timing. Understand? That is what we call scaling. It happens with the mass airflow sensor data. It happens with timing, some torque table stuff, but that can get way into the weeds. Let's concentrate on one timing table, which would be watt. So boosted cars, okay, boosted cars have an exact same thing. So let's say you have a E85 tune, 10 PSI, and you have plenty of fuel. And I say, give me a 3,000 or 7,000 RPM watt log. Well, it'll more than likely reach 10 PSI pretty damn soon, as opposed to how the NA card does. And it might just go like that really quickly. And then because you're out of boost, the max load you'll see is 10 PSI boost, 10 PSI, and you'll see 23 degrees of timing theoretically if that's how your tune is set up. And again, if I was to say, go ahead, add another pulley. Well, go ahead, pulley down, give me another 2 pounds of boost. So let's say you're gonna target 12 pounds of boost. Well, give me a 3,000 RPM watt log, and it'll do something like that and then peter out like that. So your tune is scaled so that when it sees more boost, it sees less timing. Now, that's if your tuner set it up like that. Your tuner could literally be one of those retards that goes 23 everywhere. And then shit's fucked up. But because I work for Lund Racing and we scale the calibrations so that, go ahead, add a pulley, thing's gonna make more power, it's gonna see less timing, so we just say log it. And if you have good octane or race gas under watt conditions and you have all the fuel on the planet, a level 2 and up for Innovations fuel system that is boost referenced, I can comfortably say that after dialing in your tune from 10 to 16 PSI, I probably don't have to touch your tune. Now, when we get up into the weeds, 20 and up, of course, it's gonna hit a different MAF cell, and I have to touch up fueling at that higher frequency because you have gone past the scale. Now, in tuning, the last number you see on a timing table, typically, now on some of the tables they're flipped. Some of the tables they're flipped where high boost is down here and the lower numbers are down here and the RPM follows. But with the way my eyes work and the data and the software I am used to, this is what I see most of the time. And this would be on a Coyote, the table that caps everything. So let's say, for instance, you were to go 16 PSI, same thing. Get me a watt pole, give me a 3,500 RPM watt pole, bam. It's gonna see this timing sooner, boom. And then if I say, you know what? Give me the kill pulley. Give me the 2.8 pulley and give me a watt pole. It's gonna be ridiculous. It's gonna see this. And that's the, you can actually see it on the data log when it's like 4,000 RPMs, 1 load, it sees 27 degrees, 10 PSI 23, 12 PSI 23, 14, 21. Between 14 and 15, it starts to blend. That's the other thing. In between each timing table, here, here, and here, it will blend in between those numbers. So 25, 23, this will be 24. 23, 21, this will be 22. And it might even go, depending if it's closer to 12 PSI than 10 PSI, it'll say 21 and a half or 21.75. You understand? It's blending all the time. So in between those two numbers, it is blending. So this timing curve generally looks like that. You can almost see the timing curve in the data log go up and then come flat because you're hitting your target boost. At anything above 16, if the tune is scaled for 17, it's only gonna see 17 degrees if the tune is scaled properly. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I really hope you guys understand what I'm trying to get at. Now, let's look at what a turbo car does. Turbo cars, when you get up on the chip, and let's say you launch at 3,000 RPMs, you go, and it stays, let's say 3,500 RPM. Right there. So, as a tuner, you have to go, this is where it lands, and if I want him to have less timing on the hit or make it easier for the car to spool, I am not going to give away any secrets. These numbers have to be manipulated Because what's going to happen is when he's a turbo car and he's bouncing back and forth between this, because you have to make sure as a tuner that these numbers are happy when the car is on a two-step, and then when it launches from here, there is a ramp. Meaning, if after you let go of the button on the trans brake, let go of the button, well, if you got 23 degrees and this thing's about to take off like a motherfucker, you might have to make a ramp so that it blends timing in so that the leave, now you can do that with boost control. I honestly would rather you do it boost control. Let's see if you launch and you launch at 10 PSI and the thing can ride out for about a second and then all of a sudden, zoop, zings up to its target RPM. So let's say you're at 3,500, leave at 10 PSI. Well, theoretically, if you leave it at 10 PSI at, let's say, a second or 0.7 seconds, then it shoots up really quick. You're hoping your suspension's separating, you're hoping that everything is proper, and typically this little ramp here, this little area after the two-step, okay, depending on how aggressive of a ramp you want, you see what I mean? You can then target and blend in the timing based on his boost curve. So this is scaling. This is literally what we do all the time tuning, when we try to tell people and explain to them that if you have a turbo car or a supercharged car and I dial you in at 10 PSI, you can pulley down up until probably 16 PSI and I don't have to do anything. Turbo guys are even better. Start at 10, add 3 PSI. I say add 3 PSI and log. Bam, bam. They hit it, sees 19 degrees, 3 more PSI. Bam, 17 degrees, making 1,000, depending on how efficient the turbo kit is. And we're done. And people go, wait a minute, did I get gypped on this deal? He only sent me 3 revisions. This is why. This tune is a byproduct of thousands of tunes that Lund Racing does and reputable tuners do. So there is no real magic here. It's just data that's been compiled from thousands of vehicles, and again, this is a generic scale, but Lund Racing and others that I've worked for scale it a certain way based on their data. And remote tuning, if you scale it properly and you have the math data and the injector data properly, all you have to do is figure out how to configure your files. And 9 times out of 10, if they have the octane, the fuel system under watt conditions, you don't have to do much changing at all to the tune, so that he could just pull you down and party and not really bother you much. Hopefully you guys understood that. Thanks for listening. Talk to you later.